Each and every one of you. I want to welcome you to the Senate Rules Committee hearing. It is Wednesday, September the 2nd. I think it's approximately about 1:47 p.m., or I should say 12:47 p.m. I think we have a short agenda here today. We have three individuals who are before us today, three governors appointees to the University of California Regents. Why don't we establish a quorum? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Canella?
Here.
Canella here. Leyva?
Here.
Leyva here. Mitchell?
Here.
Mitchell here. Fuller?
Here.
Fuller here. DeLeon?
Here.
DeLeon.
Fantastic. We've established a quorum. Why don't we go to file item number one? That is Mr. Gareth Elliott. I see a name tag for him. We have Speaker Emeritus John A. Perez, and Mr. Eloy Oakley as well. However, I do not see. There's a spelling error with his name. Okay. All right. There's. Okay. Is it that bad of a spelling error?
Yes.
It is. Okay. I'm sorry. I was gonna say just put the name card out there, but it's that bad.
Too many things.
Okay. So, welcome, gentlemen. We have you three here before us, all for the same position, Regent, the University of California system, the most prestigious public university system, not in the country, but rather, I believe, in the entire world. So, why don't we go, if there's any loved ones, any friends or families that you'd like to introduce, please do so. And let's just hear a short statement from each individual. So,
well, thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I just want to introduce my partner, Terry Carbaugh, who's back in the back here. First of all, I want to say what a pleasure and a privilege it is to be sitting here and talking about the University of California and the Regents. I'm very grateful to the governor for allowing me the opportunity to serve, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you and your colleagues today about the University of California Board of Regents. This is something very personal to me. I am a native Californian, Latino, growing up in South LA area, and I wouldn't be here but for, first of all, the California Community College system, and second of all, the University of California. So I'm a two-time alum of the University of California. And I was one of those students growing up in South LA that most people would have said, I don't stand a chance to be a University of California graduate. So after high school, I joined the military for 4 years, served my country, came back, and the California Community College system gave me a chance to achieve my education and to transfer to UC Irvine. And so I take this role very personal for many reasons. One is witnessing myself day to day as the superintendent president of Long Beach City College, the struggles our students have in making it through our higher education system. And I've spent most of my career working on those issues. I've spent most of my career raising issues to better align the systems and to create real opportunities for our students, particularly those who are least represented in our public education systems. So I certainly will have the opportunity to talk to you more about my experience, but this is personal for me as a Californian. I believe the University of California should serve Californians first and foremost, and I will do everything I can to ensure that it continues to be the very best public university system in the world. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to your questions.
thank you so very much, Mr. Oakley. Next, that'd be Mr. Gareth.
Hi. I do have a couple people to introduce. First, my partner, Rosanna Carvaccio, is here, as are my two kids, Calvin and Karina. They gave up part of their last day of summer vacation to join us, as well as their grandfather, Bill Jameson, has joined us as well.
And
so
okay.
thank them for joining us. I've worked with many of you for a number of years in different capacities.
I think you've been instrumental in killing a lot of bills.
Think of all the ones that were signed, sir.
The glass is half full, not half empty.
I grew up about 90 miles north of here in a little town called Chico, one of 6 kids, 4 of us that were adopted. And it was always expected that I was going to go to college, but we didn't have a lot of money, and I did go to college. I went through California public schools all through college, and I, like many of you, I had to work and I had to take out loans in order to get through that, and sometimes that was difficult. But when I look now at what students are facing and the mountains of debt that they are looking at, that sort of pales in comparison. What I went through pales in comparison to that. And so, I think during my time as a regent, I'm going to be really focused on students and their families and making sure that they're not just prepared to get into the University of California, but there are slots available for them to attend, and that they can succeed and get through as efficiently as possible. I think that is a key part in making sure that all Californians feel like it is their university and that they have a chance to partake in it.
Thank you, thank you. And if we were so lucky enough to get our bills for consideration to be signed by the governor, we had to navigate the minefield that was the assembly. So with that, we have the Speaker Emeritus with us, John Pettis. If there's anyone you'd like to introduce, please do so.
Senator, I don't have any loved ones that were willing to travel for me today. Thank you for the opportunity. And I think every member of this committee who I had the chance to overlap with got all their bills out of the assembly when I was Speaker.
And some of us got all of them signed by the governor.
Yes, ma'am. Given the hour, I'll be brief and associate myself with the comments of both of my colleagues, but I do want to touch on a couple of things that I think are crucial and that are important to me if I'm able to continue to serve on this board. And first and foremost, it's improving the interaction between the board and UCOP and those in elective office in this building. I think there's a lot more work that can be done from the UC side to improve that relationship with the legislature, with the governor, and with the other ex officio board members, the lieutenant governor and the superintendent of public instruction. I think there's always been a healthy tension, as one would assume, given our constitutional structure. But I think in the last few years, it has gotten more tense, significantly because of budgetary concerns, but not exclusively. But I think we're at an interesting moment where there is a battle over how much the university focuses on its role as a public entity, and the promise of both the Master Plan of Higher Education and the Land Grant Act that created the ability for us to create the university in the first place. And so I think it's important, and I think my two colleagues here at the table have also made it a priority to focus on that public mission and the public serving mission. But I think it's important that we really focus on that. We focus on the promise of creating true, affordable, accessible pathways through the University of California. And it's a place where obviously there's a lot of improvement that we can dedicate ourselves to in the coming years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker Emeritus Pettis. Let me throw out this question. It's an open-ended question for all three of you, and so feel free to answer how you see fit. This is a unique circumstance in that you have not just three individuals before the Senate Rules Committee for confirmation for the UC Regents, but you have three individuals of color. You're from South LA. Speaker Emeritus Paris from Northeast Los Angeles, Highland Park area, and you from the great diverse bastion of Ukiah up in Northern California, Northern California, you know. Given that two Latinos, one African American, three individuals of color, three Californians, and three individuals who are proud to be Californians who've served in capacity of public service, whether elected or in this case appointed by the governor, the executive branch, and important role that you play as, and I don't know if the title is chancellor or president, Long Beach City College, a fine institution which you have done vertically with Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach City College, as well as Long Beach Unified School District. Let's talk a little about the dearth, if you will, of color, what is without doubt the most prestigious public university system in the entire world, and what it pertains for us as a state, given that we're the 8th largest economy in the world. And not just being the 8th largest economy in the world, but with the massive demographic changes in California and what that portends for the future if you have many children of color, those who historically have been marginalized. You all know very well the challenges in our K through 12 system to begin with, improvements, but challenges nonetheless. And the dearth of folks getting into higher education as a whole, whether it's community colleges, Cal States, and even tighter, smaller fit than at the University of California level. Give us your thoughts with regards to dearth of color, Latino, African American, at the University of California system. So it's a very open-ended question for you to add on and shape the answer that you see best.
So I'm happy to begin, Mr. Pro Tem, and as you may know, I've spent a lot of time focused on this very issue, whether it's my role as Superintendent President of Long Beach City College or as a member of the Board of Campaign for College Opportunity or California Forward, or the number of organizations that have been looking at this issue for many, many, many years. For much of that time, we've had a moral obligation to change the direction of this trend, and that is, as the state continues to diversify, that diversity isn't reflected in our higher education institutions. But now the issue has become an economic imperative. We have a workforce that absolutely needs to have people who represent California in the workforce with some sort of post-secondary credential. It's imperative. Otherwise, we are not, as a state, going to continue to be the state that we once were, or not have an opportunity in the future to prosper. So the University of California, being at the top of the apex of the public higher education pyramid, really, I feel, in my opinion, needs to take a leadership role. Yes, we've had Proposition 209 and other issues that have come up that have certainly made it more difficult to specifically target groups of populations, but that shouldn't be an excuse. We have ways to look at the way we not only reach out to communities, particularly communities of color, work with the K-12 system and our community college system to ensure that there is a college-ready pool there that can go into our university, and then look at our own admissions processes. These are things that continually need to evolve as we're challenged. And so I think it's time for the university to take a hard look at its admissions practices. The university has done, compared to other public higher education universities, has done a relatively good job. But as you can see from the latest admissions numbers, we have a long way to go. So I think there's a lot of work to do. It really begins with the university taking this issue on head on, and being explicit about it and looking at ways that we can improve from the beginning to the end of that pipeline.
I'll agree with those comments, and just also add that one of the routes that a lot of students take to UC is through the community colleges. At times, it's right now it appears that the diversity of the community college transfers is actually lower than the freshman admittance, and that's a little students of color.
Okay,
sorry, and. That's something that we need to work on. We're trying to get more and more transfer students in, and we need to make sure we have the links built between some of the more diverse community colleges and some of our University of California campuses. Some campuses do a really good job in being a feeder system, but we need to make sure that we're reaching out to some of those community colleges in some of the more diverse areas to make sure that those students are given the guidance and have the pathways in order to get them there as well. And another issue that I'm very interested in and I think is important is making sure that once we admit a student, they actually enroll. It's been a little troubling, particularly with African American students, on the number that decide to go elsewhere after being given an offer. And the university is in the process right now of working through and looking at and doing interviews with those students and their families to understand why, because we don't want to lose those students.
Well, let me answer that question then, Mr. Elliott, to scratch the surface a little deeper. If you're an African-American student and you've been admitted to University of California system, so you've been given an offer sheet, but statistically, the numbers have, and that's just a challenge with the students who have been admitted, you know, let alone getting to students who
Right.
don't have even an opportunity because they're not meeting A through G, or there's not enough aggressive recruitment, circumventing, or not circumventing, but navigating the post-209, era. Do you have any data as to what is happening with these African-American students? Are they getting better financial aid packages, private independent?
I think there's some anecdotal. I mean, we all, maybe hear and think about what some of those things may be. UC San Diego is actually doing that study right now, and the idea being the best way to target going after those individuals is to know exactly what the reasons are. Is it actually financial? Is it because they got an offer to UC Merced and they maybe not want to go there? They got an offer to UC Santa Cruz and that may not have been best fit for them. So really actually getting detailed information from interviews, I think, and that's supposed to be available to us at the end of the year, I believe. I think that's going to really help guide some practices and policies that can be changed in order to make it more attractive to those students.
If I may, I think there's a couple of issues here. One is this issue of those who are admitted and choose to go elsewhere. The second is a question of whether we're encouraging everybody who could be admitted, who's UC eligible, to apply. There's been discussion about transfer student diversity being less than freshman admit diversity. This is an important question for us to look at, as an increasing number of our in-state admits are transfers as opposed to freshmen. We know, generally speaking, that transfer students do better in their time at UC than freshman admits by a small margin, which means that the students who've been able to navigate the community college system, that have been able to take advantage of the articulation agreements, have been very successful of making it all the way through. But there are students who go into community college that were UC and CSU eligible day one. We lose them in that pipeline because of delays and bottlenecks and a variety of things. So that's problematic. And the lesser degree of diversity with respect to the transfer students versus freshman admits. Second issue, and I think this doesn't only become an issue with respect to students of color, but for working class students regardless of race, especially from areas that historically have had not a high level of folks going to UC, where we don't do a good enough job going out, recruiting, and talking about the possibility of being a UC student. Second of all, with respect to UC eligible students, as we have failed to keep pace with in-state admissions, we have used the competition is such that there are many students who are UC eligible but aren't, in practical terms, competing for spots on several of our campuses. And so the question becomes what the value system is. How far down you go on admissions based on grades and test scores alone versus saying if you're above the line of eligibility, we're going to look at the totality of the applicant to decide who we admit. This is particularly important in areas where low numbers of students have gone to UC in the past. Why? Because they also tend to be schools with fewer offerings of AP classes. So if there's a finite number of AP classes at one school and a much larger number of AP classes at a school that's traditionally sent a lot of people to UC, the school with greater numbers of AP classes has a greater ability of that student getting a higher number above a 4.0. But if you only have two AP classes available at your school, there's only so far you can go. So these are issues of underserved students, regardless of race, that are incredibly important. In terms of African American students in particular, where I think we're doing least well, the anecdotal information does suggest that financial aid packaging is an issue and that a nurturing environment is an issue. So we know several years back that UC San Diego in particular had a low yield rate of admitted African American students, and that there was a perception that it wasn't a welcoming environment. And we know some of the activities that happened on the campus that may have decreased our yield of the folks who were actually admitted. So dealing with the issue of campus climate, and Senator Stone has a SCR that moved through both houses that spoke about what our values and our expression should be on campuses across the system, is actually really helpful to this conversation as well.